Nice hot day in Redkey. Cool in here though. Cooler heads are prevailing, right?
I want to thank you for coming tonight.
Well, you're welcome. Let me introduce myself. My name is Joe Thallemer. I work for AIM. I'm a field services manager, and basically my role is just to go out into different communities. I meet with new mayors, new council members, new clerk treasurers, and just try and help make your job easier. I was the mayor of Warsaw for 12 years. I just finished in December, 68 years old. I got 7 grandkids, and figured it was time for me to enjoy life a little bit. And I had a good guy coming in to take my place. So I did 3 terms as mayor. Like you all, I was on the council for 3 terms as well. So I spent 24 years in government. And I was ready to retire, but Matt Greller, who was the CEO of AIM, asked me to do this job. And I've been to probably 50 or 60 communities since the first of the year. This is my 2nd time in Redkey. And basically my job tonight, I've been told, and I want to make sure my assumption is correct, that you are all new to local government.
Except for Floyd.
Floyd, you've been for how long?
That's the last 4 years.
Okay, so Floyd, you're the stalwart here then, huh? Are you the town council president?
No.
I am.
Okay,
And then Gavin is the vice president.
okay. Let me just make a couple notes here. So that's my story. I'm going to talk just a little bit about town government in towns under 2,000 population, and some best practices. And I really want to make this a back and forth questions. I don't really have a formal presentation, but I did want to go around the room and just have you tell me your name and how long you've lived in Redkey, and why you're on the council. What would you like to accomplish being on the council?
So what's your name?
Floyd life,
Floyd.
lived here all my life,
Okay.
and I just like to see things get going for the town, make things better.
Do you work here? Are you retired, Floyd?
I'm retired at this time.
Okay.
From the railroad, right, Floyd?
Training
Trucking?
All right.
teachers.
So you got 4 years under your belt, starting your 5th year on council. Good. All right.
My name is Brenda Beatty. I am the council president. I've only lived in this town for about 9 years. And I'm on the council because we want to make a difference. We want to make a change. We want to make Redkey a happy place to be. We have a lot of geriatric people in our town, so we want to, we want to run a business without eating our people up. So we want to do whatever it takes to work as a unit.
Wonderful.
I'm Gloria. I'm the clerk, and I've lived here all my life. And we needed some changes, so I just like to see Redkey get to be a good place to live, or a better place to live.
And this is your 1st year on
Yes.
as clerk treasurer, right?
Oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry, mine too.
Yeah.
I'm brand new.
Yep. Sir,
My name's James Phillips.
James?
I've been in Redkey 78 years. I'm 80 years old. The reason I got on the town board, I've been on it twice before. It's my 3rd time. But anyway, the reason I'm on the town board is the old water leaks. That's the only problem we got in this town, water leaks. That's the biggest problem we got. I'm on the town board below it. People told me I'm nuts. People told me I'm crazy. Some of them told me they're praying for me. Some of them told me that it's impossible. But when I went back 5 years. We're taking in $2 million some dollars a year, and we're spending about $2 million a year. We was going up about $30,000 a year until coronavirus hit, we went up 300,000. But we lost 10 people in town. When the coronavirus hit, they just threw money like it was in the ocean.
Yeah, sure
But,
did.
we got people in here paying water bills, it's ridiculous. That's what I'm here for, lower the water bills, and we're gonna do it. I hope it don't take me 4 years to get it done. That's all I got to say about that.
All right,
My name's Gavin Grady. I've lived in Redkey most of my life. I was recently appointed to the council when another member quit,
right.
and my main goal is to like clean up the ordinances. Our ordinances are so in disarray and not updated, and like Jimmy said too, I'd like to try to get the water bills down. Maybe find like an alternative income source for the town, because the water is like the only way the town gets money.
And taxes.
Taxes.
Okay,
Our main problem is not really just the water though. We have a lot of CSOs from IDEM for we had a new sewer system put in and it doesn't function the way it's supposed to, so we're working on that. And the reason that our water bills are so much is because we have to pay such salty payments on the sewer system. We pay $1 million a year of payment for a sewer system that doesn't function properly and that we're still in trouble over. So it's a big issue that we're dealing with.
so I would stand back for a minute and tell you that many communities in Indiana have the same problem with the sewer overflows. They used to put the sewers and the water together, and you don't do that anymore. In 1969, when the Clean Water Act hit at the federal level, it took 20 or 30 years to get down to the local level. And how long ago did you have to do the agreed order from IDEM before your combined
7
sewer?
years, 7 years.
7 years ago?
Yeah.
So-
I ran a petition through town, 40 signatures not to stop, and they stopped for 2 years. And before, in 2 years, they raised their water bill 50%.
Yeah, and
We
that's,
had to pay to have their sewer lines cut. I don't know how many people had it cut, but we had to pay $50 to come down and see if you cut your sewer.
yeah,
And then, we got a $4.5 million grant.
got it. I was just gonna ask, probably from
And I think
Okra,
Highland too, on that
Yes.
sewer.
Okra grant.
They were supposed to fix the sewer plant we had, but we ended up with 2 sewer plants. Instead of repairing the one they had, we ended up with 2 of them.
So, do you have an engineer or a firm that is working, helping you work through the,
We just consulted one, they came and they did what they needed to do, and they've sent it out for another grant. So they're just waiting for the grant people to dot I's, cross T's, and tell us what we're missing, so that we can give them anything else that they're missing, so that they can come in and either we have like 17 miles, don't quote me on exact, but somewhere around 17 miles of line that did not get replaced when we ran out of money for the sewer system. So they're either going to line or replace
Right.
those pipes, which will stop all the extra flow to
Inflow,
our
right.
to our system. And we're supposed to know exactly what we've qualified for as of September, because we only have till December to come up with a plan for IDEM, or we're being deemed. And this has been going on for 2 or 3 years, and it just seemed like it just kept getting tabled and tabled and tabled and tabled, and nobody was working on it. So we're finally getting something done now.
yeah, again, this is unfortunately, it's bad engineering from way back when they put the combined sewers together, and now your system is aging, and you either have to replace the pipes or line them. And Warsaw had to go through that. We had to expand our wastewater plant, and we lined we got hundreds of miles of underground that we did a lot of lining to help with, so that rainwater doesn't get in and then get into the system, and then you're treating all that rainwater. That infiltration is inflow and infiltration. I&I is is a big problem with old sewer, so,
They're thinking that the most of the influx is coming in from somewhere on the east side, and they honestly think that it's in a field or something somewhere, because, once it comes, it's all coming, and they said they've tried to smoke it or put lines down it to see it, but they have to do it when it's, raised like that, and they said they're just having no luck with getting it done because of the high influx of water that's coming in at such a, powerful speed or whatever.
so certainly that puts you behind the 8 ball. When you've got, I mean, in your town, obviously your utility is most important to everyone. And now with the past, sins of the past, and now the aging, it sounds like you've got people that are going after grants for you. Is this the engineering firm, or do you have
We have a grant guy.
a grant? Can
We
you,
got a federal grant and a state grant, I think, on that other one. It's $4 million some dollars, but now I read the ordinance and it called for all brand new pipe. It's like 45,000 feet of brand new pipe, 8 inch, 10 inch, 12 inch, whatever it is.
But what happened is the first engineer died, and so we didn't get all of his plans or whatever, and then they had to hire another engineer, which the money didn't go as far as it was supposed to because of, now this is just what I've been told, I don't know for sure because I wasn't here at that time, but that is what I've been told, is that the first engineer that came up with the plan had part of the job done, passed away, and they had to find someone else to come in and try to figure out what his plans were, and the money ran out, and that's why the pipes didn't get.
what's the name of your new engineer or engineering firm?
I knew you were gonna ask me that too. I'll give you that answer in just a few minutes, I'll have to search it up here.
And I will tell you, I'm not here to fix that problem. I'm here to acknowledge that, you know, if it makes you feel any better, this is just the cards that most communities have been dealt because of the age and the way they were designed many, many years ago. And it sounds like you guys are working hard towards it, especially you.
We are.
Understanding that's probably why the bills went up to pay for that. Again, I'm not your accountant, and I'm not your engineer, not your water consultant, but all those things have to come together to get those things fixed. And it just sounds like that you're on it, but it takes a while, and it takes some dollars and some patience. What I wanted to do tonight was just because the majority of you are new at this, I just wanted to share some of my experience going into smaller communities that don't have a town manager, that just have you all have a 5-member council and a clerk treasurer. And knowing what your role is as a newly elected official is critical when you guys tackle projects like this. You know, everybody's got to know their role, stay on the same page, work together, and a lot of times in smaller communities, you know, some of these roles aren't defined too well because it may have been done differently when the other guys were here. It may have been done differently when there was a different clerk treasurer. But now that you guys got her for another at least 3.5 years, I'm hoping that, you know, after we get done tonight, at least you feel good that, you know, you're all on the same page. And I'll tell you, I've been to big cities that are managed horribly. I've been to small communities that are managed wonderfully. So it doesn't have anything to do with the size of the town. What it has to do is the quality of the people sitting at this table and doing it for the right reason. I was fortunate when I was mayor, I maybe had one council member in 12 years that all he wanted to do was cause trouble, and he had an agenda, and it absolutely, fortunately we have a 7-member council, and you know, it didn't cause as much problem, but In a smaller community, you all have to be on the same page, because if you're not, if people aren't working together for the same thing, it can go off the rail real quick. So most important thing is that you all are sitting here at the table for the right reason. And if your heart is in this community, you guys are going to do great together. You'll get these things done. Let's see. I wanted to talk just a little bit about how towns, small towns, operate. And no two towns operate the same. Again, you have to decide in your community how you want this done, but you all need to do that together and be on the same page. And I think all of you, or the majority of you being new, you're kind of coming in with good ideas and trying to put them together and sit up here at this table and work things out. The state has statutes that talk about your role. I'm going to go into those in a minute. But I want to just recognize the town officials. Obviously, the town council is the body of elected officials. There's 5 of you. The town council president is part of that. We'll get into that in a minute. Then, of course, the clerk treasurer, the town attorney, and town attorney isn't here tonight.
He was invited, Mr. Brooks, he's not here, he's
Okay.
brand new, so.
Okay, so he's new. So again, that's something else that we all have to work together with a new attorney. You have a marshal or police chief here.
We do.
Is he here?
He's at Academy, he
Oh, good.
finishes up this week,
Oh,
so
wonderful.
he's not at this meeting yet.
Wonderful. And then is your utility superintendent here, perhaps?
We just hired a new utility guy, Mr. Ted, and our water and sewer guy is on an 8-week medical vacation.
All right. And then do you have any kind of building commissioner?
No.
No. All right. So those are the key players in city government or town government. All right. Now, the difference between a city and a town: in a city, you got a mayor, and the mayor takes the administrative responsibility for the whole city. So they will appoint the department heads, make appointments to boards, propose the budget, manage or direct city operations, and they're elected. So a larger community with a higher level of government, with a mayor, a city, they have their administration in that role. That's what the mayor does. In a town, it's basically up to the board and the clerk treasurer to some extent to administrate what's going on in the city. There's no mayor setting the vision or telling you what to do and getting together and putting together some goals. This is something you all have to do as a body. Sit down and I would suggest, when you have time, sit down and talk about exactly what you want to do in Redkey. Kind of prioritize it. And I think only being here 25 minutes, I already know what the priority is. It's to get that utility straightened out. But if there's, the beautification that you're proposing is wonderful. You guys got a nice park over here. You got a lot of good things to work with. But as a council, you got to decide what few dollars you might have to spend. Where do you want to spend it? You have to prioritize what you want to do. So every term that I was mayor, I sat down with the council, and the mayor gives his vision, but the council develops a vision with the mayor, and then we created a little document, and we passed a resolution that said this is what we're going to work on for the next 3.5 years, 4 years. So that way it gives you direction. It's just not coming in and trying to put out fires and somebody's got a different direction, somebody's got a different idea here and there. They're all good ideas, but you got to be efficient. You got to have them in order that you want to accomplish them, and everybody's got to be on the same page, or at least the majority of them have to be on the same page. So that's the difference between a city and a town. The town board has to set the vision, There's no mayor to do that. And then, of course, a city has a city council, just like you all here, and basically, the role of the city council is just legislate. You guys actually in a town have more power than a city council, because the city council they pass the budget, they pass ordinance and the resolutions, and they make a few appointments to a few boards. So again, the executive branch of the town is the board, the legislative branch of the town is the board, and I'll just read by IC code, the executive branch of the town council appoints the department heads and most other positions. They oversee the employees, including the power to hire, fire, and discipline, and they direct town operations. So that's the administrative, the executive side of being a council member. The legislative side of being a council member is to propose and pass budgets, to propose and pass ordinances and resolutions, approve contracts, control the utilities, including setting the rates, directing improvements, and issuing bonds and debt. And then you also make appointments to various boards. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And you probably sit there going, oh, I didn't sign up for all that. But at the end of the day, when something comes up, in towns that are a little bigger than you, they can afford to hire a town manager. And a town manager will do a lot of the administrative things. But in a community that doesn't have a town manager, it falls on primarily the council.
Can I say something?
Sure.
We're in a situation right now where our water, waste, streets, everything, one person was over everything. He controlled and did everything. So he had never taken a vacation or anything for 10 years. And all of a sudden he gives us a 2-day notice and takes vacation, and we have no one for the water, no one for the sewer, no one for the streets, no one for the meters, no one, because he did everything.
Yeah.
Okay? And so when that ball was dropped on us, I had a lot of work to do to try to find someone to give us coverage. Since January, when I took office, I've been saying, we have to hire someone. We have to hire someone. What if this man has a heart attack? What if this man drops over dead? What if this man needs a vacation? We have no one.
Right.
And he knew all the procedures, everything. We knew nothing. And they kept saying, it's not in the budget, it's not in the budget. Well, guess what? We hired someone today because we have to put it in the budget, even if we have to pay $5 more on the water bill until we can figure out what to do to pay for fees. We don't have a choice.
Right.
So, that was a big issue for us.
And you make a great point. Ideally, everybody should be cross-trained, but sometimes financially you can't afford that. And if there's a way to have a part-timer or someone who can fill in, obviously that makes perfect sense. Sometimes you actually have to go to an engineering firm that does this type of work, and they can provide coverage in the interim, but that's not cheap.
I have that right now, and it's very salty.
It's not cheap.
It's better to hire a person and pay those wages than it is to pay the huge fees of a contractor.
So that's another issue that you as a council have to decide, setting your wages and looking at the job descriptions, where you stand now. For us to dig ourselves out of this hole, we need to be more efficient. Do we need to hire someone even if it's part-time? How can we afford to do that? You're right, there's challenges. But sometimes if you don't have those things set up, you go the other way, and then it ends up costing you more money, kind of like what's happening now. When about 5 years ago, I hired a firm to come in and look at everything we did in the city and just put fresh eyes on it to see what we were doing right and what we were not being efficient with. Now, I'm not suggesting you do that because that's very expensive. But one thing that they told us, one of the 10 things that we had to work on was getting our people cross-trained for that very issue right there. So,
Well, we had it in the budget for a part-time person, and if our other person is not getting all the overtime and all the comp time and all of that stuff, then to get another full-time person, we will be able to afford when we cut out all the overtime that he doesn't have a choice but to do because he's the only person who does every job. So,
and that's another great point. You know, our fire department, they used to get a big bill for their wages, and I'd look at what they had, and there was a significant amount in there for overtime. It's like, why don't we just hire somebody? It's gonna be cheaper than paying all that overtime.
yes.
So you make a good point. When you guys are looking at your budget this year, that's really something you need to dig into and decide what department might benefit from another. Look at what you're paying in overtime. You're right, it may be cheaper to have a part-time, somebody that's cross-trained, and that can cover on vacation. I don't know this gentleman, but I'd say after 10 years, he probably deserves a vacation.
Yeah.
So, and that's, you know, you gotta figure all that out. But again, that's what you all are gonna do administratively, is decide, and legislatively, decide in the budget how you're gonna handle that problem. And that's again, those are the problems that need to be brought to the table, so that you guys, when you come in here, those are the discussions you wanna have. Because that's obviously very, very important.
Well, we finally got that one taken care of, so we're working towards other goals now.
So I want to talk a little bit about the town council president. The town council president's role is defined by state statute. They basically convene and run the meetings. Their signature goes on contracts, and then they have, in certain instances, the ability to appoint to various boards. But there really isn't much more in the way of power that the town council president has, other than what's listed in Indiana Code 36.5. That being said, it's important that the town council member understands that all the decisions are made by everyone. They have a definite role in leadership. But when it comes to the executive, the administrative side of this government, it's going to fall on the council, which will always seem to reflect on the town board president. So again, just remember your role in town council as a
Everything else is all five, right? So, I mean, other than signing the contracts and appointing various boards at times and running and convening meetings, everything else for this board is all five of
everybody,
us.
right.
Correct.
There's nothing that says the town council president is not giving any more statutory authority than what I just read.
Thank you.
So, so again, collectively, the role of town council is the legislative side of it, passing ordinances, passing budgets, passing resolutions, and then the administrative side, which is a big part of running this community. So the town council generally acts as the chief administrative agency of the town. The only other point I want to make, you all need to remember that before anything, you're elected officials. And that means you're responsible to your constituents, and you're representing your constituents. And if you're sitting up at this table for the right reason, that's never a problem. That's never a problem. It's only when somebody goes off the rail and has a personal agenda that things can get messed up. And I've seen it in other communities. And that's why I'm not trying to give a speech here or to browbeat anybody. I don't know what goes on here. I just want you to know from what I've seen and what the state sets your role at. If you guys are here for the right reason, you work together, and you know your role, you're going to be fine.
So
Questions?
What happens if we have 5 members and one person never shows up to any of the meetings? What do we do then? And I mean, doesn't take any of the calls from the clerk, doesn't show up to any executive meetings, doesn't show up to any mandatory monthly meetings, just won't talk to us, won't do anything. So what do we do then?
Well, as an elected official, I don't know that you have any specific powers to eliminate someone.
So they just continue to get paid by the taxpayers' money to do no elected official job?
If that were the issue, I would expect that the taxpayers would fill this room and demand that the council seek the resignation of whoever that is. And again, I don't know the situation, but it's not easy to get rid of an elected official. And that's why someone who's run, someone who's been elected, been certified, taken their oath of office, it's their role to fulfill their job. And if they don't do it, you can have discussions with that individual if their attendance is not good. I'm not going to delve too deeply into the legal side of this, because I don't want to tell you something. It gets pretty complicated, but it's very difficult when you're looking at removing someone from office. Yes, ma'am.
So I've heard a couple different things, and I just wanted to check with you for like small town boards. I've heard that when there's so many, like only so many people, the president is okay to make motions and vote. In other situations, I know usually the president's not allowed to make motions or vote. So in this case, in like a 5-person board, are they still allowed to do that?
Well, what I would suggest is that the town board can make rules as long as they don't supersede what's in state code. And traditionally, the person presiding over the meeting doesn't make the motion. But, you know, I would say that the individual should vote, especially if there's a member missing.
Right.
So, and then the clerk treasurer has the power to break a tie, especially if there's only 4. So it's a difficult question, but you can develop your own rules of procedure, have your attorney review them. Again, short of breaking the open door law, which we'll talk about in a minute, it's important that you all know what to expect when you come to the meeting. And the same with the public. When the public comes to the meeting, typically there's time at the end of the meeting for public comment. That should be provided. But some communities, it gets out of hand. So the state legislature just recently allowed town boards and town councils and city councils to make rules that could limit the amount of debate. It wouldn't shut anybody off, but it could shorten, you know, maybe they only get 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay? You have to sign in when you come in. There's just certain things you can do. And then the decorum, you know, if somebody's in here causing a ruckus, you know, you can obviously ask them to stop, but typically when somebody gets going, that's pretty hard. And at that point, you know, you hope your town marshal may be in here if you anticipate a meeting where it could get loud and maybe a little unruly. It's always a good idea to maybe alert you know, your officers that you may want to stop by during the meeting and just kind of be here. But none of that's intended to limit people's ability to express themselves. But state statute is very clear during a meeting that frankly, the public's time to speak is usually at the end. And it's time for public comment. And they can talk about anything. As a rule, the council shouldn't engage because who knows what topic is going to come up. And you don't want to say something if you're not sure. So typically you let someone say their piece and then thank them. And then you guys can, if there's an issue, you can put it on the agenda for the next meeting. That's the best way to handle that. But having your rules of engagement, your rules of decorum is important here in the council chamber. But to answer your question, you know, you've got to be a little bit flexible in a small community where you've got issues that have been described. And again, as long as you have your rules of procedure, then everybody knows, you all know what to expect. And that could be a whole discussion, a different discussion, and that might be something, you know, if you haven't had that problem, maybe you don't have to worry about it. I don't go around trying to kick a can if there's nothing to be concerned about, but some communities have that problem. Anything else? Any other comments on?
We own land from 67 to Highway 1. One of them's a farm, then it went to fish factory. And I don't know how much they paid for what they got. And I asked the town board a long time ago how much they paid for it. Fish factory paid for that, they said not much. But anyway, the fish factory's out there, and they went bankrupt. Now we got fishers packing out there. But then they farm this land. We don't know who's farming it, how much or nothing. And then the sewer plant has got a bunch of land. And somebody baled hay on big bales and took it away. Are we allowed to farm that like in beans? Now that it's ready to be farmed again?
And you own it?
Yeah, I think we own it.
Redkey owns it.
Red, well, that's gonna be
That's what I
Redkey.
said.
Yeah, Redkey owns it.
You could have someone pay you to come in and farm that.
We can farm it.
Absolutely. Well, let me back up.
Okay.
I don't think IDEM has a problem with that, but I don't want to, you know, if you're already having a little bit of issue close to the treatment plant, that may be something to ask your consultant.
Okay.
I don't see a problem, but again, I'm not an expert on that, so just make sure that,
Well, how do we find out about the land out there that's farmed and been farmed?
find out who owns it.
Find out what the money situation is. Who's farming, who's getting the money? Do they turn it into the town, or do they turn it?
Well, you say the town owns it.
The town owns it.
Well, certainly if someone's farming it, I don't think it'd be too tough to figure out who that is. But they should
Would
be,
there be a record of the
there should
town
be a
farm?
contractor with whoever farms it.
But isn't
Are-
that part of the EDIC stuff, Jim? I asked it.
Economic Development Corporation, and maybe that might be, I don't know.
I think it is.
It's a good question.
When
There's,
I asked to see the books out there, they wouldn't let me have it.
But I found out that they are housed in Portland, and you and I both can drive to Portland together, or you meet there, and we can look at those books and we can make
Who
copies
they
of
at?
the
The
books.
courthouse?
No, it's at the Economic Development, there's a little building, a little,
Community Resource Center.
sorry, that's,
Community Resource Center.
yeah, at the Community Resource Center.
You wanna go there, man?
We do, yes, you and I need to, well, any of you council members that wanna
You wanna
go,
go,
we can
Greg?
do that.
Yeah, okay.
Here, bro.
if you own that, I mean, if you outright own it,
We bought it.
someone needs to have a memorandum of understanding or a contract for them to farm it.
I think they did $250,000 for it about 20 years ago.
Chad Akers said get a hold of Travis Richardson, the guy that does the grants. You have to start there to see the economic development folks.
Well, and Randy Young, again, the guy that's on vacation, is also the, president of the EDIC fund too, so, and
We need to check.
he's the president over the fire
We need to check
department.
into it.
Yeah, and well, as you should,
We
if
should.
you own the property.
And then we need to find out how many acres is out there on the sewer plant.
We can do that, John.
I mean, you can easily check to make sure it's your name on there. I mean, it's the town's
Ain't
name on
mine, don't put mine.
So the fish factory is what you're saying, the fish factory, and then the land there at the sewer system, or the sewer plant, what we're doing with that, and what was the other one? There was three. The fish factory, the sewer plant, and land where?
I don't know where.
I'm asking you, what did you say?
Well, I said, we own land from 67 to Highway 1. Well, that
67
might be the dump.
to what? Okay,
That's probably what it is, the dump.
well, we'll get answers.
Yeah. We'll find out.
All of us will have to work on it as a
Well,
team.
Grady wants to go, I want to go, you want to go. Where do you go to go?
You don't going?
I'm buying the dinner, we're eating McDonald's.
I might reconsider.
Okay.
Dick's Pizza?
No, no pizza. One small hamburger, no fries.
Oh,
To the community
What's
center.
that at?
It's at the community resource center. Can I ask your name, please?
Blake Watson.
Blake Watson. Okay.
I
So
suppose-
you're familiar with the EDIC stuff?
No, I used to be in the tourism bureau at Community Resource Center.
Okay, thank you.
I worked there for 5 years.
Thank you so much.
I voted for you, Blake. I voted for you, what was you running for?
Ah,
Commissioner.
Commissioner?
Yeah,
You're still in the race,
I
ain't you?
still live in that.
Okay, good luck to you.
good, yeah, good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, we've been very quiet about this young lady to my left. Her role in government, in a smaller community is a critical role.
Yes.
And again, my experience is that the council has to give her support, has to understand what her role is, which we're going to talk about in a second. But there's going to be some overlap. And when we talk about administration of town business, it's probably a whole lot easier for the clerk treasurer to handle some of the day-to-day stuff and let you guys worry about the longer term things that you've been talking about tonight. So again, there's no specific reference to the clerk treasurer having administrative responsibilities other than what we're going to read about here. But again, if there were a town manager would handle the day-to-day responsibilities, where you would handle more of the longer-term administrative and legislative things. So let's talk about the clerk treasurer. Again, this is all coming from state code. I'm not making any of this up. It's in the book. You can go to the code and read this verbatim. But I wanted you to understand what amount of responsibility and what the clerk treasurer's role is. So number one is to receive and care for all town money, pay the money out, but only on your order. In other words, you have to appropriate those funds and approve the claims like you did tonight. But then it's her job to actually write the check and get it out. Her role is to keep accounts showing when and from what sources the clerk treasurer has received money and when and to whom the clerk treasurer has paid out the money. So keep track of the revenue and keep track of the expenses. Prescribe the payroll and account forms for all the town offices. Prescribe the manner in which creditors, officers, and employees shall be paid. Manage the finances and accounts of the town and make investments of town money. Okay? Again, these are all in IC 36566A. She shall prepare for the legislative body, that's you all, the budget estimates of the miscellaneous revenue. So you guys get some property tax revenue, and then a good percentage of your budget comes from miscellaneous revenue, like the lit tax, the local option income tax, and then any fees that you charge and other taxes, small financial taxes, small taxes that come from the state. That all gets put into a pot. So you have your property tax money, and then you have your miscellaneous revenue. And clerk treasurer is, obviously keeps track of that, but when it comes budget time, she has to try and project what you're gonna make next year in that miscellaneous revenue. And then after you all sit down and go through the budgets together with the department heads and decide how the money will be allocated for next year, and I would suggest that you, when those budgets are prepared, the department heads should be preparing their budgets, and then the town board president should sit down with the department heads. Actually, the whole board should sit down with the department heads and the clerk treasurer. And again, there's statutes that talk about how the town board manages the budget, and it involves everyone, including the board, department heads. So, and it's a process. You'll have a budget session, just like we're doing tonight, where it's going to take a little extra time. Somebody needs to bring the pizza in because it's going to take a while. You're going to have a lot of discussion, but then that will give the clerk treasurer the knowledge of how she needs to prepare the budget so that it can then be advertised. She's got a hard job with the budgets because there are dates that these things have to be done by. So if she says, hey, we need to get this going, or we need to get this going, it's not because she wants to give you grief, it's because the state board of accounts says, you gotta have this done by a certain date, you gotta have this done by a certain date. So, again, that's a big part of the clerk treasurer's budget when it comes to budget time. And then obviously she prepares all the financial statements. Fortunately, she's got the assistance of Keystone software, which automates a lot of that, the majority of it. Serves as clerk of the legislative body by attending its meetings and recording its proceedings. Administers oaths. Serves as a clerk of the town court if you have that. And then all other duties prescribed by the state. But for the most part, it's keeping track of and administering finances of their community, and then diving into the budgets. It's not her decision what you spend, it's your decision. Your role as a council member is to allocate the funds. That's the legislative side of the budget. And after you guys sit down and talk about it, and she puts the budget together and advertises it, you guys can still reduce what's in that budget before you finalize it, which is usually at the end of October.
October?
So there's plenty of time, but you want to be starting now, and because a lot can happen. You're all just trying to project what's going to happen next year, and that's hard sometimes. You don't know what's going to happen with your grants. It'd be great to get a nice grant come to help you out, and you might rely on that, but when you're putting your budgets together, you can't allocate money that you haven't really, especially something that big. Any questions on the role of the clerk treasurer? Do you have any comments?
Grants, I'm not responsible for writing up grants or anything. I talk to the people that, do them for us,
Typically, there's some reporting requirements for grants that you're required or the town's required to do. Sometimes, I don't know if you pay the grant writer to do that. It depends how involved it is. You have a financial consultant?
No, Nate's our grant writer, right? And he gets us every kind of grant we can possibly think of, especially having Norfolk Railroad run right through our town. So
Yep.
like they're giving some grants this year for some playground equipment and stuff like that. So he tries to find every single grant that we can possibly qualify for.
So, but a grant is just like building a structure. You can build it, you can get your grant. Same thing, you got a big pile of money, you got a building. But second part of that is then maintaining it. And you have to maintain your buildings and you have to maintain those grants when they come in. Some, I'm sure federal grants are much more onerous as far as the paperwork and the filing. I am not an expert on that, but it is a very good question. I'm sure there's reporting that is simple that you can probably manage, but that's probably an important thing for you all to do when you apply for a grant, to understand what those maintenance requirements are.
Can you get a federal grant and a state grant too on anything?
Yeah, it just depends what's offered and what the purpose of the grant is. They're separate grants.
But you can get both of them at the same time.
You can.
If the grant's out there.
That's what I said.
Right. Just because they offer a federal grant for, let's just say, sewer remediation, doesn't mean there's a companion state grant.
For the same thing.
It has to be, it's a separate grant from the state. And again, your grant writer can help you identify those grants, identify them in a timely fashion so you can, if you're interested, you can apply. But you know, you need to talk with your grant writer when something comes up and understand what you're getting into.
He comes to he comes to a lot of our meetings.
Good.
He's a good guy.
Good. Well, that's good to hear because that's very helpful. So I talked about miscellaneous revenue. That's part of your miscellaneous revenue pot. Okay. So again, just kind of a summary of the clerk treasurer. She is a separate, independently elected office holder. She is an elected official. She manages the clerk treasurer's office, including the hours of operation, the hiring and firing of her employees, and the performance of all statutory functions assigned to the clerk treasurer's office. Now, the town council, acting under statutory authority, may direct the clerk treasurer to perform certain duties such as advertising meetings, swearing in appointees, preparing, revising agenda and minutes, etc. Things that have to do with a meeting. The town council does not direct the clerk treasurer on the running of the clerk treasurer's office or its operations. And the clerk treasurer may vote to break ties. I think I mentioned that earlier.
Do you know what part of Indiana code that's in where they can break ties?
I don't specifically, but it's in there. Let's see.
I'll look in my book because I've seen it in this book somewhere while you're still talking.
36566 gives the duties of the clerk treasurer, and I assume it's probably in there.
Thank you.
All right. So kind of a summary of everything we talked about for the last hour. In a town, the administration of the government is largely done by the town council, often with day-to-day administrative responsibilities performed by either an appointed town manager and the clerk treasurer. So, you know, again, it's everybody being on the same page. And if someone's responsibilities are at odds with their time or their skills, you guys need to talk about that and try and figure it out, because the only other way to get these things done, if no one can do them, is to hire someone. So, and sometimes it's not bad if you have to go out and at least get some advice on maybe how to do something better. But again, in this situation, you know, this table +1 is how Redkey is going to perform for the next couple of years. 3.5 years at least with this great group here. Yeah, let's skip that, that's not important.
I got one more question.
Sure.
Voting, what if I don't want to vote? Say, yeah, so say these two vote one way, and these two vote another way. and
Well, I
don't
think you
wanna
can
vote.
abstain like anyone else,
Okay.
but
This thing just tabled,
I'm just gonna give my opinion on abstaining. The only time I could see someone abstaining is if you have a conflict of interest. If there's a financial interest that you don't wanna participate, and I would make that known when you abstain.
Why do you abstain?
I mean, you know, I'm just saying, to me, that's best practice for the community.
Well, I don't plan on it all the time, but, say I didn't really know what I wanted to do, I would just,
Yeah. That's part of being an elected official. You gotta know what I mean, you really do. And I've always felt like abstaining to avoid controversy is you're all elected officials. That's why you're up here. You gotta make tough decisions. So that's just a little sidebar.
okay.
How do we find out how much we owe on that ring on?
How do you worry?
Well, I'm sure that the clerk treasurer has record of that, but, you know, how long ago was that?
7 years ago.
Yeah, I would assume it's,
We got books, papers out there, shows what we pay every year, and how long.
what kind, was that the Oprah grant?
That's for the, for the.
I mean, the best thing to do would maybe just call Oprah and find out.
Find
Maybe.
out how much we owe.
I'm sure Keystone can help you go back in the books.
And your administrator, your grant administrator should probably be able to find that out as well,
Okay.
if it's an Oprah grant. All right, let's quickly go through town council meetings. Regularly scheduled meetings like tonight, and you know all this. Obviously, you have to give public notice, and we'll talk about that in a minute. That's a 48-hour notice. You can give that to the newspaper or to a newspaper at the beginning of the year to cover all your regularly scheduled meetings. That's the easy way to do it, but if you change that meeting or change the time, you have to republish that. The agendas, I would assume that the town council president and the clerk treasurer work on the agenda together, or at least run it by each other. Citizen participation, obviously you want to encourage that. You want people to know when your meetings are, make them feel welcome, give them the opportunity to talk. Talked about decorum. If somebody gets out of control and creating local rules, I don't need to go over that again, but you have the right as a council to pass a resolution that says, we're going to allow people, anybody that wants to talk will have the ability to talk. We're going to limit discussion to, a lot of them is 3 minutes. When I was mayor, I used to let them go as long as they wanted. Sometimes that bit me because we didn't get out for a while, but
I think 3 minutes is a little short when you got something to
We
say.
get 5 minutes.
I don't know what we got.
some to discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you know the quorum requirements, you got a 5-member board, so you need at least 3 of you here. And to pass a motion, it's not the majority of the 3 that are here. It's your quorum. Your quorum is 3, and you have to have a majority of the total membership to pass something. So if there's only 3 of you here, you all 3 have to agree. 2 to 1 does not win when there's 3 of you here. 2 to 2 with a tiebreaker from the clerk would be 3 to 2, and that would give your quorum of 3. And obviously with a 5-member and you're all voting, it's 5 to nothing, 4 to 1, or 3 to 2. You have the majority of the quorum of your entire membership.
So did you say all three or two and the clerk can pass it, or just all three? Because that's.
All three, you said all three.
You have to have a majority of your membership, which is 5 members.
Which is 3.
But the clerk is not gonna vote unless there's a tie amongst 3, well, it can't be
Oh,
amongst 3 of
you're right,
them.
you're right. With the 4, I
Right.
can, because that's all that's pretty much showing
Yeah,
up.
and if
Okay,
there's
gotcha.
4,
Okay.
again, a majority vote means a majority of all the elected members of the council. And occasionally you have to have a 2/3 vote, and that would be 2/3 means 2/3 of all elected members. So you have to have 4 for a 2/3 majority.
And those are required under what, I mean, can you give me an example of what requires a 2/3 vote? Just an example.
Trying to think. I don't know offhand, but I know it's not very often that that's required.
Okay,
That's pretty rare.
okay.
You can pass an ordinance in one meeting, but you have to suspend the rules because an ordinance normally requires at minimum to be passed at 2 separate readings. And if there's a need to pass an ordinance, if there's a time sensitivity, you could pass it tonight on the first reading, and then after that, if you felt you wanted to pass it tonight, one of you would have to make a motion to suspend the rules. And that's all by code, by Indiana code, you can do that. You have to vote on whether or not you want to suspend the rules. And if you do, then you bring the ordinance back for a second vote that same night. So that is a possibility, but your attorney will be here. It's not difficult to do. You need to know that you can do that. For the most part, if there's not a time sensitivity, it's better to do it so that the public has a chance to react to the first reading and there's time in between. But on occasion, if there's a time sensitivity to getting something done, you can do it in one meeting. Budgets, additional appropriations, I think vacations of property require public hearings. All right, public hearings are different than a public meeting. A public hearing is a specific agenda item that by statute requires, anytime you allocate money, you have to have a public hearing. And you all have your normal discussion. Let's just say you're voting on a salary, an amendment to the salary ordinance. No, that wouldn't be right. You're voting on an additional appropriation. And you all decide, yeah, we need that money, we got it, let's do it. Well, you can't vote on it until you open the meeting up to the public and allow both those in favor of and those against to speak. And a public hearing, again, if you pack the place, I let them all talk. Give them 3 minutes, give them 5 minutes. Try not to be redundant, but nonetheless, a public hearing is a statutory requirement for different types of ordinances. And you all will know that when something comes up that it requires a public hearing. Then you close the public hearing. You ask if anyone has any final comments. You close the public hearing. Then you bring it back to the council and you guys vote. So it's really no different than what you do normally on an ordinance. But in the middle of your deliberation, you're inviting the public to make comments specifically about whatever it is you're discussing. So don't get mixed up between a public hearing and a public meeting. You know, a public meeting, those doors are open, anybody can come in, and they have a chance to speak at the end of the evening during the public comment section of the meeting. But if there's an agenda item that requires a public hearing, that's when you have to invite the comments from the public for the public hearing of, again, typically when you do your budget, if you do an additional appropriation, probably buying property, selling property. Again, there's a whole list of things that require public hearings.
Are they all listed in this book?
No, you're gonna have to talk to your city attorney about that. There is a section in the book, and I brought a couple extra books. Sure. There you go.
Have you had one too? You got one? Okay.
So, there's probably a section there on public hearings, and it'll probably list examples.
Okay.
The other thing that I think is critical in a small town is that if you have a conflict of interest, and your attorney can help you with this, at the beginning of the year, you just fill out a conflict of interest form. You know, my name is such and such. I have part ownership in the hardware store. The city does business with the hardware store. Okay? Everybody, you do that, and then you all approve those in front of everybody. That's how you avoid a conflict of interest. In a small community, even the city I live in, it's unavoidable that you're going to have a conflict of interest because the community is so small. There's two types of conflict of interest. There's a annual disclosure. Okay, I'm an optometrist, and our health plan for our city employees allows vision care. So, as mayor, I'm also an optometrist, and our city employees come to me for eye care. There it is. I mean, it's there. If there is a specific project that comes up where it's out for bid, and somebody may be a subcontractor, or somebody's brother may be a subcontractor, which again in a small community happens a lot. You know, then again you can fill out a conflict of interest form specifically for that project. That's important to do that. You don't want somebody coming back and saying, you voted for this and you were just lining your pocket. Well, yeah, my brother works for, you know, the hardware store, but beginning of the year I told everybody that, and that's the important thing. Now, if it's and again, I'm not a lawyer, so if there's any question, you talk to the lawyer, but if it's a large financial interest, you know, then you may abstain from a vote or just withdraw. But those are things that you need to be aware of. I plan on being done at 7:30, so we got 15 more minutes. I got a few things I want to talk about, and then I want to take questions. Open door law. Every meeting that you have is open to the public. Okay?
Including executive if you're terminating someone and have a question on that. Okay.
I'll get there, because you're right. But a public meeting must be open to the public, and notice must be given at least 48 hours prior to the time of the meeting, not including Saturdays, Sundays, or legal holidays. So if you got a meeting on Monday, you can't give the notice on Saturday. Okay? Notice must include the time, date, and location of the meeting, and that's any meeting. Okay? Notice must be posted at the principal office of the entity holding the meeting, so up at City Hall or Town Hall. Must be directly sent to any newspaper or media outlet that have requested notice of the meeting. Notice can be given once a year for regularly scheduled meetings. Annual notice for executive sessions is not permitted, and we'll talk about executive sessions in a minute. In the event of an emergency, you may meet within 48 hours, provided that the news media must be given the same notice as is given members of the governing body. So if let's say you have a problem, a major problem, an emergency here, and you call the town board members and say, we got to talk, we got to figure this out. You have to call the newspaper at the same time you gave them notice, or whoever's responsibility that would be. And the public must be notified by posting a copy of the notice, which again you'll do at the town hall. So, let's see. Now let's just talk about executive session. You are allowed to go into executive session for the following reasons. And before I give you the reasons, you have to understand you cannot vote in an executive session. No decisions can be made. It's primarily for taking information. You know, let's say you have a security system that you want to put somewhere. You really don't want the public knowing that, because that defeats the purpose of a security system. So that's just one example. So, executive sessions may be held where authorized by federal or state statute, i.e. through collective bargaining. Or if you are initiating litigation, or someone's initiating litigation against the town, you have the opportunity to meet in executive session. Litigation includes any judicial action or administrative law proceeding under the federal or state law, the implementation of a security system, the purchase and lease of real property by the governing body. If you guys are going to buy some property or sell it, you want to huddle to decide what you want to sell it for, you know, what you'll take for it, or how much you want to pay. And obviously, you can't do that publicly because you lose your bargaining at leverage, and the state recognizes that.
I'm so sorry.
So that's the open door executive session is IC 514 1.5 6.1. Now there's a few other reasons you can do it. To receive information about and interview prospective employees. To receive information concerning an employee's alleged misconduct. To discuss the individual's status as an employee, but you can't determine what you're doing. You can't say, well, he's done, we're getting rid of him. You can talk about what's happened and what your options are, but any decision has to be made in a public hearing, or excuse me, public meeting. If you get some records, let's say something from your sewer overflow, you get something from IDEM, and it's a classified document, you all can have a meeting about that, just you guys. And finally, to discuss a job performance evaluation of individual employees. This does not apply to discussion of the salary or compensation. It's just about job performance. And again, no decision can be made. So I would, before you call an executive meeting, you have to advertise it and you have to state the reason you're having the meeting. So that all comes from the code. Questions on executive sessions. Again, just to review, the executive session, the notice, you must cite the statutory provision for why you're doing it. No votes may be taken in executive session. All final action must be taken in a public meeting. And then the clerk has to prepare a memo for the executive session. Excuse me. The council must prepare a memorandum for the executive session stating who attended, start and end time, the meeting location, the provision, why it was done, who attended, and affirm that no votes or final action was considered during the meeting. There's administrative meetings. I think they're kind of like work sessions, but I'm not going to go into that. That's something you can look up. That's another exception to having to provide advertisement for the meeting. You guys could have a meeting to discuss the administration of town business. The door has to be open. If someone comes in, you can't tell them to leave. But you don't necessarily have to advertise for it. Any questions on open door? And that's a thumbnail, and you have to be very understanding of how that works, because public access counselor Luke Britt is his name. His phone number is 317-233-9435. I used to call him all the time.
Luke Britt,
Luke Britt.
B-R-I-T-T.
He's a very even-tempered, he knows the law. I would call him and say, Luke, can I do this? And he would give me his opinion.
So this is on open door, or what kind
Just
of?
if you have a question on open door law.
Okay,
We're gonna have an executive session because of this. It doesn't quite fit any of these. I'd call him. He's good about, that's why he's there.
okay. And he's through Ames, works with
No,
Ames?
he's a state public access counselor. And he'll use the answer. Okay, minutes and agendas must be available to the public. All votes must be cast publicly. Secret ballots are prohibited. No serial meetings. That means you can't meet with him, and then, or two of you can't meet, and then you go meet with him, and then you go meet with him. In other words, you're trying to skirt the open door law. The open door law says with 5 of you, you can't have any more than 2 of you discuss business. If you do, it's a violation. If there's 3 of you somewhere, and a citizen walks in and says, hey, what's going on here? You guys are talking about this. It's a violation of the open door law. I would consult Indiana Code 5:14, 1.5, 3.1. That's the statute that talks about serial meetings, and it will probably explain it better than I can. No proxy voting. So, a funny story about serial meetings. When I was mayor, we had 3 members on the Board of Works, and one of them lived next door to me, right next door. So every time I went over and talked to him, if we talked business, I was violating the open door, because that's the majority of the 3. So I'd say, Charlie, we can't talk business. We can't talk business. And we didn't. But that's how applicable that is. Now, if you guys all get invited to the same party, or whatever it would be, whatever you guys, however you enjoy yourselves, if you all happen to be invited to the same thing and you're all there, as long as you're not talking business, city business, town business, you can be there. Don't feel like you cannot be there. Someone may make a big deal of you all being together, but as long as you're not discussing, just like Charlie and I across the fence, as long as you're not talking city, town business, you're fine. So don't let that bother you. I'm done. I've been talking too long. Yeah, let's leave it at that.
Thank you very much.
Questions?
Thank you very much.
So there is absolutely no meeting that can be done with a vote unless it's public, period. So everything has to be public
Period.
knowledge. That's the open door law.
Right. Now, in the case of an emergency, if a water main breaks and you gotta make a decision,
Right,
something like that.
right.
But it's gotta be an emergency. So, and again, I know just enough about the public law side of being in government because of my 24 years, but I am not a lawyer. Lean on your town attorney, lean on the public access counselor if you have questions. You know, I gave you all these references, and you can go in and read them, but they're not easy, they're complicated. And one could be for a town of over 2,000, but it's way up here, and you start reading something thinking, man, we're doing something wrong, when it doesn't apply to you. So it's really tough when you get into the IC codes and try and read them yourself. I think it's important that you get in and look at them when you have questions, but I'd always run it by your town attorney if you really feel like you want to make sure you're doing the right thing. You know, purchase a property, you know, all these things are great questions. But yeah.
Now, there's some training for new council members coming up in the Fort Wayne area, right? Like towards the end of the year?
The AIM Idea Summit
Yes.
is in October, and there will be a lot of education provided at that meeting.
So
And
where do we go to sign up for that? What?
You will get notification from AIM.
I will.
Yeah,
Okay. And it's for new council members, right?
new council members, clerk treasurers, everybody.
You went to one, right, Gloria?
Clerk treasurers are having a meeting next week in South Bend. They have about 3 or 4 meetings a year where it's pretty much education. And something for the town board to understand, clerk treasurer now has requirements for continuing education. She has to go to continuing education as required by the state now. So I know sometimes it's not cheap to do those things, but I always tell councils, you know, when the State Board of Accounts comes in for an audit, right here is who they want to see, and you want to make sure she's got everything buttoned up, and your support of what she does, and making sure she's got the proper education is critical. So,
What was that number on that public access counselor's number?
oh,
You got it?
Luke Britt.
Luke Britt, and he's got a deputy. One of the two will answer the phone.
Does anybody out here have any questions for, Amy?
Joe,
For
yeah.
Joe?
I enjoyed every bit of it, yes,
He's very knowledgeable. I'm
Yeah.
glad we had this meeting, so.
yes.
Can you come back, Joe, to have a meeting?
Not everyone, but now I know I've been here twice now. But I was looking for a place to get a sandwich downtown. Is there a saloon?
We used to have one, but it's like not open anymore.
The bar,
Bowses, but I thought he was talking about what's
That new place that opened up is really
what's the
great.
one that,
They got donuts.
no,
Oh,
not
breakfast.
bistro, but,
Keep out